So then, I remember one day I was 14 and my dad was like, come, play with this band called Dear Abby that I'm doing. And it was a bluegrass cover band with some local cats, but there's no drummer. And we're doing all these covers.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I developed my sense of time, was not having drummers. So
Yeah.
I did that around bars. Dear Abby played, and we played. I'd make money, and but by that time, when I was 15, 16, I was already a staple in downtown Dothan, Alabama, where I'm from, and people thought I was 25 because I had a beard and long hair, and I was a regular at these bars, and they didn't card me.
Yeah.
So I was living this crazy double life of drinking and being an adult, and then going to my high school the next morning,
Wow.
for a long time. So yeah, I started this shit way early,
It truly shows, man. Not only in your playing and your professionalism, but in your prowess. But like, you are like the hardest working bass player in show business. I think you were playing like every night, dude, and so many different, the largest stages that you could possibly play on. And then like last night I saw you at the Underdog, which is filled with, there's this whole scene of brilliant musicians that have been drawn to that club, but the capacity of that room's maybe like 50 or 60 people.
And and that's the thing, is I've always, I don't look at it, I've never looked at this as work.
Yeah.
So, my amazing wife, Kara Kirkland, has to put up with me always, constantly, but she's so supportive of it. But it's definitely, I wouldn't say an obsession, but more of like a lifeline, because of just that we're talking about, that chase for the sonic purity.
Yeah.
That sometimes rains on you and sometimes it doesn't. And it's just always going back to that my room, my music room, when I'm 11, playing in front of my high school friends. I'm not high school, but elementary school friends. But so yeah, I think it just, every gig I'm trying to go back to that.
Yeah, man. Well, so there's like this whole avenue to go down with you, but I think like overall, when I think about you, is that you are you're like funk, jazz, fusion, but anything but metal. You have this metal influence, but you are carrying the torch of improvisational music, in particular a torch that I feel was handed to you by Colonel Bruce Hampton.
Yeah, I mean, that's, if you want to go on with Bruce now.
Yeah, I don't know how soon we want to jump into that. I didn't want to get right to it, but I feel like we're dancing on it, and I feel like the childhood thing you're talking about is like the Bruce kind of thing, Well,
it's weird, because my uncle Jay and David, I mean, they're these, my whole family are eccentric, kind of like outlaw thought people.
Yeah.
I mean, my story of my family is, essentially my aunt and my uncle and my mom and my grandmother and my grandfather, they grew up in the Virgin Islands in the 60s. So, and my grandfather, when he quit playing full time, he went to World War II, became a bomber pilot, and then became an air traffic controlman.
Wow.
So he designed the airport at the Virgin Islands. And what's crazy is, I was telling this to my buddy the other day, was how that generation of people didn't go to school. They just figured the shit out. I mean, he was from, my own grandpa was from Cedartown, Georgia, which is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's like, I was there a few years ago filming a movie, and the reason why they chose the movie, because it looks like it's from 1960 still.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it's like they were, they moved to Dothan, Alabama in the 60s from the Virgin Islands, and people thought my family were aliens, I mean, the heavily, I mean, it's that whole, early 60s Alabama bullshit. The segregation and all these people are weirdos and hippies and all this stuff. So, I kind of grew up in this eccentric family with, like my uncle was basically a shit starting comedian, and my Dad David was always up the in some kind of trouble, you know.
Yeah.
So the Bruce thing made total sense. I mean, it was, and, you know, Colonel. In case people don't know who Bruce Hampton was, he was a Southern mystic, basically. I mean, he was a band leader. He was a prophet. He was a mystic. He was a psychic.
Yeah.
He was like Kara, my wife, called him a time traveler, which I think is hilarious because, you know, it makes sense. But, you know, but Bruce had a way of finding young musicians and kind of implicating the ways of the world to us, you know. And how I discovered him was by sheer magic. You know, I was buying vinyl from a flea market, and at the time I was getting into kind of eccentric improv, you know, from Howard Ira to Later Train, and then Zappa. And all this weird, cool stuff. It was like my era. I was 16 of like getting into this really heavy stuff and not realizing how heavy it was. I was drawn to it. And the guy selling vinyl was like this 3-foot tall dude with a huge mustache that went down to here. We could just call him Stash. And he said, I have every vinyl in the world in a warehouse. If you give me a list, I'll find it. So I gave him a list. He didn't have all of it, but he threw in this record. And it had this weird guy with like a Beatles jacket on holding a guitar, and then this other guy with like a powdered wig with huge glasses. Like he's like, you know, not a wig, but like everything was white powdered. You know, it was weird. And it would say the Colonel Bruce Hampton, Late Bronze Age. And the back of the cover had a fireman with a hose. Like, you know, it was strange. So I listened,
outside looking out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I put it on and went, oh my God, really speaks to me.
Yeah.
Because it took all these elements of Zappa and Southern music and rolled on the one. Anyway, didn't think anything of it. I said, oh, Atlanta, Georgia. Like, you know, at the time, you know, I grew up in a small town or smallish town, and the move, as everybody thinks, is you move to L.A., you move to New York, you move to Nashville. Those are your three options if you want to make it, you know. But I saw it said Atlanta, and I knew that my dad and my uncle lived together in Atlanta in the 70s, and my mom lived there, so I had some history in Atlanta, and actually my uncle and my mom wasn't born yet, but my aunt, my uncle, my grandmother, and my grandfather, they all lived in East Point in the 50s.
Okay.
So I have history there.
Yeah.
But I didn't. But you don't know anything better because you think the only music happening is those three cities. You know? So I really want to go to the new school of music, and I was all this stuff, but then when I discovered the Bruce thing, it was like Atlanta. So the local bar I used to play at called Moon Times, which is
it was a Widespread Panic bar.
Widespread Panic bar.
Oh my God! And
this guy Sammy Norris, who's the bartender, who I have to credit him for a lot in my life because at the time, you know, being a young, egotistical jerk, young musician, you know, I was only into extreme metal, extreme art, improv, experimental music, and everything else was bullshit. Besides, like, you know, funk and R&B and stuff. I hated jam bands.
Yeah.
I had a sticker in my car that says "Jerry's dead, Fish sucks, get a job."
I remember those.
And here I am hanging out in this jam band bar, and Sammy one day was like, "Go through my CD booklet and pick out a CD." Now this is after I discovered Bruce. This is a week after that, or 2 weeks. I'm going through the CD booklet, like, okay, Stockholm Syndrome, that sounds cool. Bloodkin, I picked those out. And then I saw a CD with this kind of yellowish CD with this guy doing this with a mustache. And I was like, oh, so I grabbed it. It was a Aquarium Rescue Unit.
Wow.
And that was the big one. Like, hearing that ensemble of guys live is the first record. It changed everything for me because it was always elements of all this different kinds of music in one. And it was just honest, I guess, you know. That's where the Bruce thing started, and at that moment, I said I have to play with Bruce. I was his disciple at that moment.